Hi, my name is Jason Anderson.
And my name is Lisa Haller, and we are the programmers for the Shortcuts program here at the Toronto International Film Festival. Welcome, and thank you so much for checking out this Q&A, where part of the filmmakers are here to talk about their films in a one of two-part series. We are so excited to be joined by several of the filmmakers in the program, and we would like them to introduce themselves and their films for you today. So Tank, how about you start?
Okay, my name is Tank. My cartoon is called Reckless, and it's about my time in segregation as a young offender and how I survived it.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Jeremy Schaulin-RIoux, and my movie, or our short, is Rules for Werewolves. About a bunch of kids breaking into houses that think maybe they can become werewolves.
Hi, my name is Igor Drljaca, and I am the director of the film The Archivists. And it's about a group of young musicians in a post-apocalyptic dystopian setting who discover an old vinyl and try to reimagine one of its songs.
Hello, my name is Reza, Riahi. And the title of my film is NAVOZANDE, the musician. And it's about old musician that found his lost beloved one after 50 years in 13th century in Persia.
Great. Thanks, and thank you again for being here with us. We're thrilled to have you. And yeah, I'd love to get started just by asking the filmmakers to really sort of talk about the beginnings of their films and perhaps the inspiration. Certainly very different films, all exciting and original in their own ways. But I'd love to hear about how they began and why you felt so compelled to tell these stories. And I think we'll start with Tank, certainly, because it's obviously, as you said, it's a very personal origin for you too.
Right. Well, I was very hesitant about doing this cartoon. My producer, Christine Cook, she had to convince me for a couple of months. I usually just stick to horror, sci-fi, monster trucks, like cool things. And I've always stayed away from personal stories. But she was very encouraging that I do that. And as I was trying to figure out what this story was, I had called a friend of mine who is in the cartoon, and we have two other friends. His brother, who's in the cartoon, he died in segregation, and then our other friend, he also passed away. So I asked him his blessing, really, to make this cartoon, and he agreed. And then throughout it, I was trying to, I was reading articles about the lasting negative effects of prolonged segregation, like suicidal thoughts, depression, impulsiveness, which is very common. People are alone for that long time. So I wanted to really figure out why I am the way I am, and also shed light on this type of torture that they do to people, which has since been deemed cruel and inhumane torture. So there's protocols with so all that has changed, and you can't just keep a kid locked up for that long by himself without these protocols in place. It was tough making it. I did wig out a couple times, thinking back to then, but through it all, I became a lot closer with my friend. We didn't really talk about these things, and now it's getting this positive feedback and positive attention, and now we feel more encouraged to be able to talk about it. Yeah, that's what
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing and having that courage. It's such a great film. We're so happy to have it here.
thank you.
Maybe we got Jeremy want to speak about kind of how this began, because this is an interesting source too, because it's as an adaptation, I guess, too.
Yeah, I was in Vancouver, I think in 2013, and I randomly checked my other Facebook inbox. You guys ever check your other Facebook inbox? It's where like messages go from people that don't know you. You should check it, because I never check it. And then I randomly got a message from a guy from Texas who wrote, just like in all caps, "I wrote a book. I like your music videos. I'm going to send it." And I was like, who is this nut? And then I sort of looked up the book, and then the book showed up, and it was Rules for Werewolves, which is this unbelievable novel about these kids kind of on the fringes coming together and sort of creating their own rituals and their own world in this B&E lifestyle. And I sort of grew up making, like, helping friends with skate videos and like street ball mixtapes and working with punk bands. And I feel like kind of kids expressing themselves through, you know, on the edges of society and behaving badly is sort of super in my wheelhouse. So anyways, I read this book, and I called like a producer, and I tried to play it cool. And then I called the man who wrote the novel, Kirkland, and I was just like, "I'm coming. I'm like, let me make it. I'm on my way." Like, I didn't play it cool at all. And we started working on the movie. And the short is this part of the novel that's like this monologue that was sort of what connected me to it. I think this idea of, I mean, I guess people are seeing this, they just watched all this stuff, right? So this idea of found magic and kind of looking for something that you're never going to find, being like a quest of your life, was just really, really what made me go, like, it made me graduate from going like, oh, I could do a nice job of this, of like going, this has to be me. I have to fight for this. This is the thing for me. And then we made it.
Great, thanks so much. And then Igor, to talk about sort of where you started with the Archivists.
It was like a very sort of odd way that it got inspired. There was a concert, the Walkmen. It was this American band that like is no longer together, and it was like their last tour. I think it was 2012, end of 2012, and just like listening to the music and then like knowing that the band is about to sort of go their separate way, kind of inspired this sort of kind of moment where I felt like, you know, what would happen to this music if it's discovered later down the road. And even though we didn't necessarily use the Walkman as like the track that they discovered, it was like, it actually was a concert that kind of led to the inspiration for the short. And then I wrote something a bit longer that sort of encompassed, you know, this band, you know, trying to create music in this sort of space that's quite dark, but like, you know, trying to find this sort of positivity within it. And then that sort of led to like this something that I could actually pull off, which is a shorter form of that project. And that's sort of how it came about. And even though I wasn't trying to be overly political or topical, oddly enough, it sort of became that way. And yeah, that it was really just like, you know, what happens to, you know, creativity once it's stifled by some other process, and you know, how this creativity, despite all odds, is still going to lead to some sort of like creation nonetheless.
Great, thank you. And Reza too, which is, it is such an extraordinary film you've made too. And it's one of the things when you think about sort of some animations projects, I mean, these things start years and years ago, I'm sure. I mean, when did this program, and you know, what was the beginning of this film for you?
Yeah, first of all, all the description, there was I'm very curious to see the films, because there's other side of the, you know, description and inspiration of the others. So I'm very curious. Okay, for me, it was always music. I was always inspired by the music. I mean, listening to music to write or to draw. Originally, I was a caricaturist in the beginning. I was always doing the caricatural cartoons and all, doing the humoristic stuff. But I think that the fact that actually I grew up in Iran and the dictatorship government, that actually all this stuff that happened actually to me or to other people, to other countries, that's actually I couldn't go on the path of the humoristic stuff. So I automatically whenever I listen to any music that's for me brings some more drama or more stuff that I couldn't control. So for this one, actually, I was listening to the music and I was doodling with the music. That it was a specific track called "Silent City" by Keyan Kalhor. Is a traditional musician, Persian musician. That's the length is 30 minutes, so there's up and down in it. So I was just listening to it for some months and just doodling around and creating the characters and everything. And of course, there was some backgrounds of what I actually lived in a country in Iran before I lived to France. So actually, everything came up together. So I did this film.
Great, thanks so much.
Well, clearly music is a very large inspiration and starting point for you two, for the Archivists and the NAVOZANDE, but sound and music also is really integral to RKLSS and Rules for Werewolves as well, in terms of how you develop your story and how it kind of moves your characters through the narrative. Do you guys want to talk about how you use music and sound to drive your films as well?
Sure. Well, it was my fiance who made the music with one of her bandmates, Brandon. And I've collaborated with her on almost every single cartoon I've made. And she's an absolute genius at what she does. And I really just have to give the feeling, and she knows me well enough that she can interpret it. And she brings the heart to everything that I do. I think without her music, the emotional resonance would not be there. Yeah, so I'm very grateful that I have her. I don't think it would be as impactful without her.
Yeah. And Jeremy, same with you. I mean, you chose to roll out your film with a dual narrative, the way that you edited the story over the action. So if you want to talk about that as well, we'd welcome it.
Sure. On the music side, I come from music videos. I think the reason that Kirk, the author of the book and the screenplay, got in touch with me is because he liked a bunch of music videos I did for, I work a lot with my friends in this band Pup from Toronto that I think are really, they're the greatest, a punk band from Toronto. And so I think me and him started kind of vibing on this project, sending each other records and albums to listen to. So that was always the in to everything, is kind of punk music. And our composer, Dylan Baldessaro, kind of on a super tight deadline, just disappeared for a weekend. I think he called up a friend in Hamilton and just came back with the score fully formed, the day before the deadline. He was in a studio, mangling guitars and pulling drums apart and doing all this really cool stuff that kind of brings everything to life. And then the dual narrative side, I think I always like in stories in movies when someone tells a story. I think like it's always kind of a battle in pitching this, was this idea that we're going to have somebody telling a story that we're not going to see. And I think that's kind of the fun, is not seeing the story and having to figure out, does it connect with what we're seeing in this kind of long one take? Are these things meant to play off each other? Is it contrasting? I think it allows the movie to talk about smarter things than I can, say, especially right now. But I hope that works. This idea that, sorry, my cat just fell off a couch. I hope that it works to watch a story being told, because I think that's really interesting, and you learn a lot from the storyteller, and you don't need to cut to the story. But I think jury's out on whether that's successful.
Oh, it's good. It's successful. I can,
Okay,
as
cool.
a member of the jury,
the
I can
cat's
say
back.
no.
We're good. All right, good. Thank you.
And that's it. And we continue with sort of talking about music. I mean, obviously the Archivists and NAVOZANDE are just like, it's very deeply immersed with the storytelling. And I guess starting with Igor, just talking about, kind of how that idea evolved in the film to have the performance element really become such a core part of the film.
I was trying to create a space where the sound sort of suggests this sort of potential creative process, like the environment is just sort of the nature itself, the space that has all these like sort of old artifacts, and what do we do with these artifacts? And the performance became a way to deal with how they make sense of what they find, and like the stuff that they discover kind of makes its way into this reimagining of a song that's somewhat damaged. They can't really make it all the words. So I felt like instead of making a commentary on necessarily just their world, their present, they're sort of trying to make sense of this world that came before, but in a very sort of intimate, private way, using a character and a particular sets of artifacts that they discover from that character. So it needed that performance element for that to carry. And I think that probably one of the hardest things to do during the filming or the pre-production was sort of trying to, write the lyrics, find that balance of capturing the world that they're commenting about, or like this world that no longer exists, but leaving something despite the sort of what seems like a dark future.
And maybe before we leave that with you, I mean that song has so much resonance too. I mean, was it always going to be Small Town Boy? I mean, the song has so many.
Yeah, the song. I mean, I felt the song is extremely important as an LGBTQ sort of empowerment and protest song. So I wanted a song that had that sort of pop synth element, and I was attached to that song from the beginning as being and I wasn't sure we could actually get it, especially like get a chance to reimagine it. But Scotty and Supergroup and David, who passed away unfortunately, they were very, very helpful in securing and getting us the ability to use that song. So that song was extremely important thematically and sort of culturally to try and sort of work it into it. But that was always the song that we wanted. So we got lucky.
It works so beautifully. And I guess, that first thing actually to Reza too, the music is again sort of almost, the visuals are beautiful, but there's so much emotional richness in the music you choose. And was it difficult to, getting the rights to that particular performance, was that a challenge? Were you very particular about that?
You mean getting the rights for the reimagining or just just the directing? Working with Noah. Yeah, no, it was like when I saw Noah actually perform music, because he was actually sort of performing stuff. I think he just started performing some songs on Schitt's Creek, and I'm like, this guy is extremely musical. I think he can really be good for this role. And he was Connor, Ashley, like the people that helped us produce the film. They also sort of recommended that I seriously consider, you know, actors who are musically inclined to begin with, as opposed to like teaching the actor how to be musical. And I think that really kind of helped the process. And Noah was extremely helpful in, like, you know, making sure that all the nuts and bolts, the lyrics, the melody, everything sort of worked together. And it took a few days to rehearse it before we shot. So it was an interesting challenge that I've never had before, but it was one that I hope in retrospect sort of is worthwhile.
Thank you. And Reza, just staying on the topic of music for NAVOZANDE, I mean, like what I'm curious is about the sort of, you know, almost, I mean, so much emotion again pours through that music, and it's almost like you kind of have to have the music sort of be everything that these characters are going to express. I mean, was it a challenge to kind of find a way to sort of, you know, use music, but also not let the music become too much emotion too?
Yeah, definitely. It was actually the main, I think the biggest challenge for me was the music, because it was the voice of the film. As you know, it's 15 minutes, no dialogue. It's a voice of the film. There's no dialogue. There's nothing happening beside music. I mean, of course, the visuals. But the thing is, for me, I think the most tiring part was the music, because as all of you know, for animation, I mean, specifically for this one, you have to have the music before starting the production. And especially for this technique, we were shooting with the camera on, I don't know how to say in English, in the bon titre, there's something with the camera and you animate it frame by frame. So we had to have a music before, you know, shooting the scene. So it was a big challenge for me to find actually the composer and performer for this one. And I found someone that actually is a very great performer, Sabah Alizadeh, and he has years of experience. But the problem is with this film was that actually I had almost no one had this experience to help me to you know, to do this film, because no one did the music for the paper code animation. So we had him for months before starting production on the storyboard and animatic. So I had him like on the discussions to write the music. So he was doing it, but he had no idea how the visuals, how it's gonna end. So he was doing, but just, you know, trusting me, I was trusting him. So we did this, and after finishing it, we filmed him to match the animation. So the animators, they were looking at the movements of the instruments, so they match it, and technically. I'm talking technically about the music, but because it was a big challenge for me. I mean, of course, it was a voice of the film, and there was a big challenge of which part I put the music and which part not. And as you said, it's not going to be too much because it's a very delicate thing on the musical films.
So true, yeah.
So each one of your films makes a really unique and different impact, and we know that it's going to resonate with the audiences. Is there anything in particular that you're hoping audiences will take away from watching your film? Anything you want to impress on them, or anything that you were hoping that they would get from watching it? You can start with anybody. Jeremy?
I was hoping to have more time to think. I wanted people to be moved, I guess. I think that there's, I don't have anything too easy to say. Just, I just think that, you know, the reason I got into movies was because I found out that movies weren't real. And so making them was kind of the closest adventure you could have to being in them. And so I hope that people watch this short and feel kind of moved to see their own lives as adventures, and just kind of see that you can find your people. Maybe I'd say that.
That's beautiful. Igor?
Sort of what I said, during the first question, inspiration. It's sort of like, no matter how bad things get, I think people can always find a way forward. And sort of looking at any society. I come from a war-torn country where, like, you sort of, that's probably indirectly what kind of was partially what inspired this film indirectly as well. And in that space, you sort of lost everything, but there was always this moment where the artists always had hope that things would get better and things would improve. You know, the peace concerts, the peace marches, sort of like what's happening now in the world. There was always this attempt at, like, continuing to create, continuing to use art as a source of moving forward. So even if it's apolitical, it's still sort of a way to move forward. And that's sort of what I kind of want people to take away from it. Like, even though the situation right now in the world seems dire, I think we need to constantly engage with creativity and see a way out.
Great, thank you. And maybe Tank, if you want to share a little bit of how this film was able to help you work through your personal past, and you've already spoken a little bit about, you know, what you wanted to impress, but if there's anything else you want to add.
Well, I had no idea it was going to make it this far. And when I was making it, I wasn't thinking of audiences or how they were going to take it at all. I really just wanted to honor my friends, Yvan Blanchet and Trevor Spooner. They can't speak for themselves anymore, but yeah, I don't know. It's like it's just proof that something magical happened for me, like the process of making this, and then the film is just evidence that something happened for me, really. Yeah, I was glad to have the opportunity to make it, and maybe even happier that you made it this far. Just, it's totally crazy to me that it's at this level.
Well, we think it will resonate with a lot of people, and not only because of its message at the core, but also because of its crazy, raw energy that just sort of blasts you into this world. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing. And then Reza.
The question, I think that reminds me of myself when I see the movies, any film. I mean, it's kind of make my life divided between before I see this film and after I see this film. So I'm hoping to achieve that in one day in one of my films, to make that impression to the audience. For myself, I mean, for this one, particularly for this short film, I was hoping to show that there is still poetry, there is still beauty, despite all the stuff that happens to anyone, anywhere, any century. And I think that's what I was aiming for. But I think that's as Jeremy said, that's we trying to impact the audience. We have to, we want to move the audience, but it's a very tough path, because I mean the audience, they're not the same. There's a big variety of the cultures, and everyone's living different stuff. But I think that's what I'm aiming for, I think.
I want to say for me and Lisa, and for, you know, I think everyone sees the films, we're just so grateful for the time and energy you've poured into these pieces. So we you know, thanks again. And thanks also for sharing your experiences about making the films with us today too. So yeah, I'm gonna say thank you for, I think, the 4th time in this sentence. Thank you again.